What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Mikey McNuggets, Earl the Pearl, G. Bush coming at you on this Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show Bleacher Report collab stream today. And guys, we have a very simple question that we are going to try and dig to the bottom of on today's stream. Is Kevin Stefanski a good NFL head coach? I've come up with a test for you guys, 8 different categories that will help us determine the answer to this simple question. Is Kevin Stefanski a good head coach? But to start, before we dive into the test, Earl, yes or no, is Kevin Stefanski a good NFL head coach in your opinion?
Yes.
G. Bush, is Kevin Stefanski a good NFL head coach in your opinion? Yes or no?
Yes.
Beautiful. So let's dive into the 8 categories that I have come up with to help us determine once and for all what Kevin Stefanski is, whether he's a good head coach or not. The first category, and Earl, you got a minute to explain your answer on this one. Do you believe Kevin Stefanski is a good, great, whatever term you want to use, a good motivator / leader of men?
I think he's a good leader of men. I'm not sure if he's a good motivator. I think he's a good leader of men because he's even keel. Like, he doesn't let his emotions get too high or too low. And because of that, I think, he can remain non-biased in a lot of situations and able to give out an opinion that's not leaning too much one way or another. And, I think the same thing that make you laugh, make you cry. I think because he is so even keel and you don't see too much emotion, it's hard to put him as a good or a great motivator because it's like you don't do anything to really raise anybody's intensity emotionally. But I think he's a good manager of people. I think he does a good job of keeping the temperament in that locker room together. But as far as being a motivator, no, Kevin don't strike me as a dude that make you want to run through a wall, so to speak.
G, yes or no on is Kevin Stefanski a good motivator / leader of men?
And when it comes to leader of men, I think he does a really good job of, to Earl's point, he stays even keel. I think he is really clear and direct when it comes to his messaging. I think he has an aura and a sense of calm and poise when it comes to things when they get in adversity. Examples, I like to give examples of that is, all hell broke loose last year, and he had PJ Walker, he had DTR, he had Flacco, and he still led them to the playoffs. There was a year where they had COVID. I thought he masterfully handled COVID. I thought he did a really good job in that, and I think he does mitigate some other things where it won't be. There isn't too many loud fires where it's just like guys are going crazy. But when it comes to motivating people, motivation sometimes takes fear. Sometimes motivation takes, emotions and being excitable. I think he's an average motivator to below average motivator when it comes to motivating guys and getting them fired up on game days. Even when it comes to penalties and things like that, I think he doesn't have enough consequences to where people think twice about having some of those different things go wrong. Think Bill Belichick when you say negative motivation.
Yeah, I'm not sure how he is in the discipline category, which is not one of the 8 we're going to get to. As far as motivation goes, we're not in the locker room. I'm just guessing, but I'm going to make an educated guess based on when D'Anthony Bell came on UCSS, came in studio and said, Kevin gets us ready. He knows how to be the right leader for this team. He's actually in the locker room, so I'll take his word. But I kind of give that one, I think so, but I don't feel super confident either way. G, you're up first on the next one. Is Kevin Stefanski a good, great game planner? Yes or no?
See, this is why I gave 45. I said it's like 45, 55. I think he should be gone. And the reason why it gives me pause is depending on what quarterback is back there. I think he's a great game planner when you're dealing with mediocre quarterbacks or below average talent because he makes guys like Jacoby Brissett look good, Case Keenum look all right. But when you're talking about guys that are supposed to have talent, Jadeveon Clowney, Amari Cooper's had problems with it. Even Odell Beckham Jr. said, hey, I'm open. You ain't get me the ball. He's had problems with quote unquote top flight talent guys and finding plays and ways to get those guys involved. So I would say game planning wise, no, not at the highest level. I think he gets out coached by some of the top tier coaches. And sometimes he gets out coached by them when they're having bad days. So no, I would say no.
Earl?
I would kind of go average with that. For some of the reasons G alluded to, he seems to get the most out of mediocre quarterbacks. But whenever he had a guy that was supposed to have superior talent, he wasn't able to get the most out of that player. And then you look at other superstars that he's coached, Odell Beckham Jr. to be an example. Like you got a guy like that who's always been a high volume target guy, and for whatever reason, he was not able to get him the football on a consistent basis. I would also go average based off of more often than not the opening series for the Cleveland Browns on offense. It's like chef's kiss, and anything beyond that is like murderer's row. And so when you look at that, and to the point, there's times where he seems to be getting out coached by the opposing coach. And anytime you put together a game plan to where your pass run ratio is like 90-10, it's hard to call you anything but average when it comes to game plan.
I go to the Bills-Lions game last night, and Buffalo knew Detroit likes to play a ton of man-to-man coverage. So what they do, they spread them 5 wide, and with their running back on wheel routes, burned a depleted Lions secondary with injuries for over 100 yards on Ty Johnson, who wasn't even starting in any fantasy leagues this week, turned out to be like the 5th highest scorer. That's great game planning. And the word I use when it comes to Kevin Stefanski and game planning is inconsistent. Because like you said, Earl, their opening drive scripts are immaculate. And then the rest of the game, it's kind of like, what are they trying to accomplish? And we've seen games where I think they've done a wonderful job of attacking defense's weaknesses. And then you go back to Sunday, and it's like, what were you trying to do? What were you actually trying to accomplish? What were you trying to attack? And if we can't answer that question after 60 minutes of football, then I think you can question the game plan. The third question ties into it, Earl, which start with you. Is he a great play caller? I know it's kind of hand in hand, but in terms of actually calling plays, I know he's handed it over to Ken Dorsey in the latter half of this season, but for the first 4.5, it was in his arsenal. How would you grade Kevin Stefanski as a play caller?
I think he's good depending on who's the quarterback. It kind of ties into the last point we just made. It seems like, it's funny. Me and Cecil talked about this in the last episode of the Ultimate 216 show, that offensive coordinators and head coaches, they tend to box you in based on what they believe that you can do the best. And I can only assume that he comes up with the plays he's going to call per quarterback based off the things that he see in practice and the things that he see on film. He seems to be more comfortable going downfield, for example, with dudes like Joe Flacco. Jameis Winston has Dorsey now, but like when he was there with Flacco, he seemed to be more comfortable going down the field with him. I think Jacoby Brissett took more shots down the field when he was being coached by Kevin Stefanski, and Stefanski was calling the plays than Deshaun Watson did. With Deshaun, there was a lot more RPOs, a lot of more situations that allowed him to use his athleticism. So to me, I think he's good depending on who's under center at quarterback.
G, how would you grade Stefanski as a play caller?
I would grade him as a solid play caller. If you had to give me, I had to give you a grade, I'd say somewhere around B- to a B. Here's what we've evaluated. He has enough in his repertoire to get you to maybe first round of the playoffs, right? We've seen him do that before. Now, is that going to hold up in an AFC championship game on the road where you got to go score for score with somebody? I don't know. Some of the deficiencies are it's very ball control. You need a great running game. You're depending on an offensive line that has to be, when you want to run Stefanski's stuff, I think people don't understand. You got to have a top 5 offensive line. Mm-hmm. You got to have a dominant running game. And how many dominant top 5 offensive linemen can be road graders and protect the quarterback in the ways that you want to protect them. And also, you're going to have a vertical passing quarterback who's going to go and play action and throw the ball downfield. Those type of offense are really rare today. And, a lot of the players that you need to run that style offense aren't readily available. So it looks good when you have the pieces. We see what it looks like when you don't got the pieces. I would call it a good, B- type offense. It's yet to be seen if the Stefanski offense could win a championship.
The Stefanski offense is a little less creative, but similar to the San Francisco offense that of Kyle Shanahan. He just doesn't have all the bells and whistles and the toys that Shanahan has. So I'm not sure I'd go that far, G, but I think you nailed it with the right players. I think he's a really good play caller. Does he know how to call an offense for an RPO-laden quarterback? I don't think so. At least this season didn't show him and didn't give him a great example of that. So I think for the most part, he's been a pretty good play caller, but excellent and versatile. I'm not sure that those adjectives describe Kevin Stefanski. The next one's something we've touched on, and I think we're all going to be in unison here. I'll start with this one. Does he get the most out of his talent? The answer is yes if you're not a good player, and the answer is no if you're a really good player. And I'll just leave it at that. So if anyone else wants to chime in on that, the floor is yours. If not, we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, we move along.
We can move on.
Next one. Is Kevin Stefanski, Earl, you're up first. Is he a good/great ego manager? You go back to the Mike Tomlin situation with Le'Veon Bell, with Antonio Brown, with Big Ben. You never heard any of those stories get out. Do you believe Kevin Stefanski is good at that part of being an NFL head coach?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I just go back to a couple of years ago. Somehow, some way, Odell Beckham ended up on the Rams. The next year, Baker Mayfield ended up out of the organization. Absolutely not. It seems like anytime that you have a player here with a big ego or a big personality, those things are not managed well. If they were, then Odell would have never been sent home without too many questions being answered. If they were, then Baker would never be making public statements that the only person who decides if I play or not is me. Those things wouldn't be happening. You think about a lot of the things that has taken place and that's been said under his tenureship. Now, granted, he can't tell every grown man what to say or how to act, but, you know, in certain organizations, you knew what you could do and what you couldn't do. You go back to 15 years ago, there's no way in hell Tom Brady stands in front of the podium and says, I'm the last person to get the last say on who I play or not. Bill Belichick would have set Tom Brady down, even if he is Tom Brady. Well, he would have tried. Robert Kraft wasn't gonna let that happen. But
it would have been an argument. It would have been a conversation.
He would have tried. So, like, when I think about just, you know, some of the players that has came and went over the last 4.5 years, I would have to say absolutely not. And those are the two biggest examples of that.
G, what do you think about Kevin Stefanski's ability to manage egos?
Oh man, that's horrible. I mean, I go back and you gotta think about, I got a photographic memory when it comes to things happening bad for the Browns. I remember Jarvis Landry on Thanksgiving giving out turkeys, talking to Mary Kay Cabot like, yo, I can't believe they got rid of my mans. This is crazy in here. Listen, I'm like, wow, Jarvis Landry, the guy that we was applauding for his hard knocks, he turned into a guy. And then think about this. Think about the salacious tabloids that Jadeveon Clowney had. Yeah, they setting Myles Garrett up to beat the sack record, and they got me over here. When I'm table scraps, I said, wow, they had to sit him down because he said he was only playing on third downs. He told him, by the way, Jed Will said, listen, I'm making business decisions. Amari Cooper was like, man, he had I'm all welcome for a trade. Let him keep talking about trading me to San Francisco. I'd love to get up out of here. This is just a couple of them. Listen, man, it seems like every year somebody with a top name has been disgruntled and is happy to move along. McNuggets, I give him an F in this area.
You guys covered a lot of the cases. I do not think that is one of Stefanski's strong strengths. Let's just leave it at that. Next one. We saw a little bit of this from Stefanski this year. How do you think he is as a delegator, G? As the CEO type of head coach, how do you think he is as a delegator?
Listen, I'm gonna give him. I don't believe. I don't believe he should.
I don't know how to evaluate this.
Listen, I don't want to give him an F on this one. Actually, I don't think he should have delegated certain things, but I'll give him A for delegation. Right? Anytime that you bring in potential people like that could take your job, like Mike Vrabel, I don't think he has that big of an ego. Right? He like let him in the door. It's like bringing your hot friend over while you having marital problems. Nah, bro, you shouldn't do that. When you're looking around, he lets Jim Schwartz do whatever he wants. He handles that side of the ball. He turned over play calling to Dorsey. He even gave a young dude that never coached in the league, opportunity to prove himself over the run coordinator game. They told him to get rid of like his best friend, Alex Van Pelt, who was on the staff where he got coach of the year. He did that. I think he's a good soldier and is willing to collaborate with everybody. I'll give him an A, but I don't know if it's smart in some certain circumstances, Earl.
All right, so for me, I got to give him a C, and I think this is something I can speak to with a lot of confidence, man. So when I first became a supervisor for the city of Cleveland, delegation was one of the things that I struggled with. And I think when you talk about delegation, trust goes a long way with that. In my opinion, the Brown staff last year and the years prior was much better than this staff. Like Alex Van Pelt, Bill Callahan, Stump Mitchell, the tight ends coach, etc. That staff to me was a more quality staff than this current staff. And Stefanski failed to delegate. When you don't trust the people that you hire and put in place to do their jobs, then that says a lot about, like, yeah, you trust them a little bit, but at the end of the day, you feel like you gotta have final say over everything. And rightfully so, you the head coach, but then don't come out and say, well, everything is a collective effort. I felt like he should have handed play calling over to Alex Van Pelt a long time ago. I felt like this whole CEO mantra should have been how he handled himself a long time ago. You had a good quarterback coach and a good offensive coordinator and Alex Van Pelt. If you think about when Mike Prefer coached that playoff game that Stefanski missed, guess who called those plays? Alex Van Pelt. And so when you look at that, it seems like the only person on that previous staff that he was willing to delegate to the most was Bill Callahan. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Callahan was senior assistant coach, right? Right. So
he was the run game coordinator as well.
And so just knowing all of that, to see him delegate this year, it's hard to give him a passing grade for that because it's this delegation by choice or by force. We don't know. So
it's fair. I think the fact that he's delegated since he's been here, essentially the entire defense to Joe Woods and Jim Schwartz, special teams to Mike Prefer and Bubba Ventrone. This year, he delegated more of the offense to Ken Dorsey. I think he's a willing delegator. I'm more in line with G that I'm not sure he's delegating to the right people than his willingness to delegate. I would take Kevin Stefanski calling plays over Ken Dorsey 100 out of 100 times. I've watched enough Patriots games this year to think Kevin Stefanski's a better play caller than AVP is, and that shouldn't have been delegated, but that's a situation we'll never know the answer to because they let him go for reasons that we can speculate on, but we don't actually have a definitive answer. We got two more, guys. Do you think Kevin Stefanski is good, great, or bad at his willingness to adapt/change? I made this the flexibility category. Is Kevin Stefanski a flexible head coach in a good way, G?
He's too flexible. He's too flexible. Like he has to have some sort of lines. Like one of the things that he's too flexible on is the identity of the football team. Mm-hmm. You can't I know you wanted to make this thing around Deshaun Watson, but at some point in time, you got to have something that you believe in. And I give a person the opportunity to show their skill sets. Only way I'm switching something is if you show me the skill set involved with that. If you want to go RPO and we doing it in practice and you can't do it in practice, I'm not running that in the game, dog. You listen, I come to you and like, you said you comfortable in this. Is this comfortable? These little short passes is not the comfort level that I'm comfortable with, and the team's not comfortable, so we can't get you comfortable. So you're just going to have to be uncomfortable for the time being until you find the skill set. No, you got to – I'm hurt, coach. Well, listen, Jed Wills was hurt the whole year. Maybe he need to work his way back into some game shape. Your two tackles, DeJuan Jones and Jed Wills, look like they was just like he's too flexible with some things. Some things is a hard line. Some things is, you know what it is. I always go back to this. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the only team in the league that be having practices on Friday. It'd be padded too. Can you imagine that? Like when you come to the Pittsburgh Steelers, you say I'm going to come here as a free agent. And Mike Tomlin says, well, listen, I know you're a good ball player, but look, we got practice on Fridays and we tackle people. And TJ Watt does it and Hayward does it and we all do it. And it's part of it. You down or no?
That leads into the next question we'll get to. Earl, real quick on terms of Stefanski's ability to adapt/be flexible with his teams. What do you think?
I think G hit it. He had me rolling. Y'all remember the Titans?
Yeah.
Coach Bull told Sunshine, man, he said you could throw it a mile, but can't pitch it a foot. That's how they beat. That's how the Browns be running RPOs and practices. Like, look, set, pitch it. And now you can throw it a mile, but you can't pitch it a foot.
It's a great movie.
RPOs.
All time. Last category. Is Kevin Stefanski a good culture setter? Earl?
Go ahead,
I
Earl.
don't
It
know.
ain't me. It's you first.
And it's okay. Hey, listen, my answer is I don't really know on this one.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know because up until now, I said that Kevin Stefanski played a large role in this culture shifting. But I'm starting to wonder, we don't know what's really what, right? We just hear a lot of tea leaves from people who are closer to the situation than us, and we can't guarantee anything that we hear to be facts. But from everything gathered, like it just seems like it's too many chefs in the kitchen, and every time they cook up a meal and they go serve it, it just tastes god awful. That's what it seems like. So I'm just gonna lean on the side of I don't know. I don't know.
G?
I want to say he's a good man. He's a good person. I like it. I like his principles. I think he's principled in the fact that he doesn't throw any of his players under the bus when like 90% of them deserve to be thrown under the bus publicly. He refuses to do it. I think he's a really good, solid, like human being. The problem I have with culture is a thing that, to me, I think you got to have all four. I think you have to have the head coach, you got to have the general manager, and you got to have the ownership. Now, we know ownership is out the window. You can't even really count that. So if that's a negative, you're going to have somebody else cover up from that by being great. So if your owner's bad, that means your general manager has to be top notch. We see with the Guardians. Front office has to be through the roof because we don't have no money to spend. Then, when you get down to the coach, you got to have a player's coach that can motivate the guys at the highest level. We've seen Stephen Vogt. We saw Tito be able to do that. So the Guardians are able to cover up for that. And the third prong is you need that guy. If they got the quarterback and they got the guy that can transcend all of that by calling the plays, they can overcome some things. But I think truly to change your culture, you need a person that's in place at quarterback that's there for 10 years. And he's a guy that drives it on the field and says, you guys are going to play a certain way because I'm the quarterback. That's the Tom Brady. You see that in Cincinnati. He can, Burrow can get out a lot of stuff. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Those guys can play a certain way where they can eliminate certain bad things. I think he's a start of the culture. And if he had a quarterback, I think he possibly could do it. The problem is, I don't know if they can find that quarterback.
Yeah, this is one that I give like I think so, but I'm not 100% sure just because we're not in there. You look at his tenure. They've overcome some pretty giant obstacles to keep this thing afloat. This year has been an objective failure. There's no other way to explain 3-11. There's been disappointments on the offense, on the defense, special teams. It's all been an objective failure. But over the course of 5 years, I think they've done a pretty good job of building a culture that, in theory, is set up properly to win. This year it has not worked, and they have to reevaluate how they do certain things. So I think he does a pretty good job establishing a culture. I think he's too undisciplined, or allows his team to be too undisciplined without certain repercussions. I don't think it's a perfect culture, but I think for the most part, he has built a culture. Whether you agree with that culture or not, that's up to you. But he's built a culture, and before Stefanski, with the constant turmoil at head coach for this organization, there really was no culture. So the fact that there is something in place is a start. Earl, we're going to wrap it up around the horn. You start, G. You're next. I'll finish. If it was up to you today, what would you do if you were Jimmy Haslam in terms of Kevin Stefanski? Is he back next season? Are you moving on? It is December 16th at 5:24 p.m. Eastern Time. It is your decision, Earl. What would you do today?
After we did this entire exercise and I'm sitting up here thinking about my closing comments, I think I've come to the conclusion that Kevin Stefanski is just inconsistent. And I got to ask myself, can I deal with the inconsistencies if I was the person that was making that decision? And the answer would be no. See, when Kevin Stefanski became the Cleveland Browns head coach, not just the Browns, but the entire world was dealing with something that was crazy, and it was called COVID. And Jason likes to allude to the reason why the Browns had a successful season that year is because nobody was in the building. Nobody was around. There was no distractions, right? Everybody had to stay home. But I flipped the coin and looked at it like this. And this is a first-time head coach, right? And you're implementing a new system with a new staff, and you can't be around nobody that you're now in charge of. And somehow, some way, you was able to get the best out of that group. You was able to get them to understand what it is you wanted to do, and you made the playoffs. So naturally, every single Cleveland Browns fan looked at that situation and said, okay, well, let's up from here. Because if you can do that in these situations, when we get back to some type of normalcy, what we now look at as new normal, you know, all he can do is just build on this and build on this and build on this. But it seems like every time that Kevin Stefanski has put forth a product that's been successful, and then opponents get the opportunity to break it down on film, and we come back next year, we can't pick up where we left off. We scrambling to try to figure things out. I understand the NFL is full of parity, but like if you look at it, just his tenure, man, it's almost 5 years. We got 2 winning seasons. We haven't had back-to-back seasons with double-digit wins. We haven't had back-to-back seasons where we made the playoffs. It's just been a lot of inconsistency, man, and that don't get the job done. When we talk about like continuity, when we talk about cohesiveness, and we look across these teams that got it, at least those teams is having way more success than the Browns. You think of the Chiefs winning Super Bowls and division titles. You think of the Bills. They ain't got over the hump yet, but they won a division title. Constantly a player when it comes to AFC championship games, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, when you look at the Browns, man, we are not what I want us to be, and I will have to let it go.
G?
Ooh. As we go through the questions, I think if I was Jimmy Haslam, I would have, at the buy part of the what's the name, I would have came out and spoke, and I would have let them know that instead of sending the GM out there and with Stefanski, I would have said, look, we evaluating everybody moving. Everything is evaluating. You know, I think we get caught up in this thing where everybody want to know if they safe. Is so-and-so safe? Is so-and-so? Let me ask y'all this question. All the great people on UCSS YouTube channel and Bleacher Report. Hey, man, we all got jobs. We get evaluated each and every day. There is no wait till next year to see if you're going to be here. How many votes of confidence do you get during the day? It all depends on what your boss feel like and how many budget cuts coming. You don't know what's going to come. So that the whole process, when you talking to people and saying, oh, well, we give them a vote of confidence, no, that's not the way life works. And if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And what you've seen for the Cleveland Browns is, I would rather you be mediocre 2 years in a row and then be playoffs and then 3 and something. You know why? Because that tells me something about what's going on here. That means there was an overall drop in everything: execution, player talent evaluation, your draft picks. And guess what? The only thing that went up was the money. Look at the bags. Everybody, they spend the most money on the roster, real dollars. They renegotiated. They brought everybody back. And this is the energy you got. So, no, they would have been reevaluated. They got 3 more games. If it was me, I'd give them 3 more games. I'm evaluating them games. If they end the season with no wins, no, you're not coming back. You don't deserve to come back because you didn't have no sense of urgency. I saw Andrew Berry up there sitting like everything was cool. Everything's not cool. Everything is not. Just because you don't show no fight does not mean that you're cool and calm. That means what?
Not to cut you off, G, before you go, Mike, I think that's part of the problem, right? I think we all know in life, too much of anything can be a bad thing. But, you know, when you don't, that lack of emotion, that lack of wanting to express yourself and show emotion, like that could be a detriment to this football team, like through and through. If you think about it, they both sit up there and they be so stale, and it's like, man.
But they do that to us. We don't know what they're like on the inside with the team. Like, Bill Belichick was like this for 30 years to the media, and we know that's not how he was behind the scenes. Like, just because what they portray to us does not mean that's their persona.
Bill Belichick is cold and calculated in multiple ways. Bill will call you in and be like, yeah, you're cut.
I'm just saying, what we see is not necessarily the reality. Like, to Earl, your point, I want my guys to be more fiery. But just because they're cool, calm, and collected in front of us does not mean that's the case. J.B. Bickerstaff, for example, who we all agree with the Cavs, was not the world's greatest head coach. He was cool, calm, and collected in front of the media. In the locker room, if you're walking through those hallways, you could hear him chewing out his team from outside the locker room doors. So just because he shows us one thing does not mean that's the reality.
But the messaging is devastating, though, because what people will start to do is say, when we talk about the Cavs, when JB got up there and said, this is a young team, I said, what? This is not a young team. What do you mean? You still making mistakes? I said, Darius Garland, been in the league 4 or 5 years. This is not a young team, and you're handling them in every press conference with gloves. We're like, no, you can't do that. Like, because people are going to start to assume, like, oh, yeah, you one of them soft guys.
I hear you guys.
Wrongly.
I just know that's coaches give one thing to certain people and then another to the other. I come to the conclusion today. I've gone back and forth on the Stefanski thing. I don't feel super confident either way. It's like 51-49 what they should do. But I think I've come to this conclusion. I think I'm going to stick with this. If the Browns plan on drafting a quarterback, if they're gung-ho that in the first round of the top 10 pick that they're going to have this year, they're taking a quarterback, you got to move on from Barry and Stefanski. And if you're okay not taking a quarterback, then keep them, see if they can right the ship. But I think the worst thing you could do as a franchise is draft a quarterback and then fire the coach and general manager in their sophomore season and have them start fresh. Because A, it wastes a year of their rookie deal. B, it's a young quarterback now learning a third offensive system in 3 years with 3 different head coaches and 3 different offensive coordinators. It stunts growth. I'm trying to think. I'm racking my brain, and if you guys have an example, please chime in, of a team that drafted a quarterback high in the first round with the coach on the hot seat that then fired the head coach and the offensive coordinator. A new regime came in, and then it had success. I'm struggling to find an example that comes to mind.
It happened with Baker Mayfield, and then that flamed out. Remember?
That's a good point. Yeah. My point is, if you're going to draft a quarterback, bring in an entire new regime to tie to that quarterback. I want the regime, the coach, the general manager, and the quarterback all tied into one. And if you're going to go with a defensive tackle, an offensive lineman, a receiver, running back, whoever else, I'm fine letting them run it back with the 2 that are currently there.
Because McNuggets, if you think about it, like it wasn't, even when Baker played that well, they got to the playoffs, you had a new regime that said, I don't know if he's worth
that's my point. It's the quarterback is the most important position, and if it's not your guy, you're stuck. So that's kind of
what they did with their guy. You see what happened with their guy.
My point exactly. So that's, you know what? I just gave that take for the first time here. I'm going to stick with that take till the end of the season, regardless of how the 3 games play out. If they're gung ho on taking a quarterback, you have to clean house. And if you're okay taking Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, anyone else, then let Stefanski and Barry run it back and see if they can right the ship. And if not, then you fire them next year, and guess what you're doing in 2026 with a new head coach and a new GM.
And if we take
You're drafting Arch Manning with the first overall pick.
If you take Travis Hunter, y'all leave his girlfriend alone.
Yeah, that's
stop
crazy.
Messing with Travis Hunter.
Yeah. That's going to wrap it up here for this Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show Bleacher Report collab stream. We appreciate y'all tuning in, and we'll see you on Sunday for our post-game show. For Earl, for G, I'm McNuggets. Peace.
Peace.